You've got a way of turning everything into a lesson, Dad. That's the last thing my son said to me before he hung up. And I sat there in my kitchen a long time afterward, holding the phone like it might explain itself. It was a Tuesday night. I know that because there was a pot roast in the oven I'd forgotten about, and by the time I remembered, the bottom of it had gone black. I hadn't been invited to my only granddaughter's graduation party, and I didn't find out from my son, or from his wife, or from anything as simple as a card in the mail. I found out because a woman I used to sit 2 pews behind at church tagged me by mistake under a photo, the way older folks do when their thumbs move faster than their eyes. The picture was of their backyard, a big white rental tent going up on the lawn where my son used to run through the sprinkler when he was 6, string lights, round tables with cloths on them. A caterer's van backed into the driveway with the doors open. Across the top of the photo, my daughter-in-law had written, "1 week out, and the countdown is on. Can't wait to celebrate our girl." Somebody had asked in the comments how many people were coming, and she'd answered, "Up to 94 yeses. Gonna be a full house." 984. And I read every one of those names as they scrolled, the way you press on a bruise to see if it still hurts. My old neighbor from 3 streets over. A couple of my son's co-workers I'd met exactly once. My daughter-in-law's book club, all of them. A full house. There was no chair in that photo with my name on it. I'm 66 years old. I've had worse Tuesdays. I buried my wife when I was 41 and our boy was 10, and I can tell you there is no photo on this earth that hurts the way a closed casket does. I've had my knuckles broken by a slip pipe wrench and set them myself in the truck because the ER copay would have eaten the grocery money. I spent 31 years as a pipe fitter and plumber, most of them on my knees in crawl spaces that smelled like the underside of the world. My body kept the receipts. I know what real trouble looks like, but there's a particular kind of quiet that comes over a man when he realizes he's been quietly written off by the people he built his whole life around. It doesn't announce itself. It just settles into the house like a cold draft you can't find the source of. Let me back up, because if I only tell you the ending, you'll think I'm the good guy and my son's the villain, and that's not how any of this works. My name is Dale. I grew up outside Grand Rapids, Michigan, in a house my father built with his own 2 hands and heated with a wood stove that never quite kept up in February. I met my wife at a Union Hall dance when I was 22, married her 14 months later, and we had exactly 1 child, a son, because the good Lord in a hard pregnancy decided that was our lot. We didn't complain. That boy was the sun and the moon to both of us. My wife had an aneurysm on a Sunday morning while she was making pancakes. No warning. 1 minute she was flipping them with that spatula she wouldn't let me throw out, and the next she was on the kitchen floor, and by Tuesday the machines were the only thing breathing for her, and by Wednesday they weren't. My son was 10. He'd wanted chocolate chips in the pancakes that morning, and I told him no, we were out. I have never in 30 years stopped thinking about that. Such a small no. It's a strange thing, the no's you remember. So it was just the 2 of us after that. I was not a natural at it. I burned toast. I braided hair like I was tying rebar. I showed up to his baseball games still in my work clothes, smelling like solder and pipe dope. And I sat in the bleachers hoping none of the other parents got downwind of me. I missed things. I worked doubles, and I missed the science fair and a couple of birthdays, and one Christmas Eve when a hospital's whole heating loop went down and somebody had to fix it. I told myself I was doing it for him. I mostly was. Every decision I made, I ran through 1 filter. Not what do I want? Never that. Always, what does the boy need? A man tells himself that's what love is, and it is, for a while, until it quietly becomes the only shape you know how to bend yourself into, and you forget you were ever anything else. He grew up all right, better than all right. Went to community college, then finished at a state school, got himself a job in logistics, coordinating for a distribution company, married a woman with a nice laugh and expensive taste, and gave me a granddaughter who has had my whole heart since the day she gripped my finger in the hospital. They bought a house in a subdivision about 40 minutes from me, one of those new builds with the 2-story foyer and the kitchen island the size of my first apartment. I was proud. Lord, I was proud. I'd handed my father's stubborn, grieving, self-taught version of raising a kid down the line, and it had come out the other side as a young family in a house with a foyer. I kept helping after he grew up. That's what you do. A brake job here, a set of tires there, a check at Christmas tucked in a card. Nothing that raised an eyebrow. Just the ordinary grease a father puts on the gears of his kid's life, so it turns a little smoother. Then, about 6 years back, my son called me on a Sunday night with that particular tightness in his voice I hadn't heard since he was a teenager who dinged the car. Money was tight. My daughter-in-law had gone down to part-time. The mortgage had a way of not caring about that, and they were behind. He hated asking. I could hear how much he hated it. And I told him what any father would tell his boy. I said, let me carry a piece of it, just till you catch your feet. Just till you catch your feet. Remember that phrase. I meant it as a rope. They heard it as a floor. That was 6 years ago. I never stopped. Some months it was 400. Some months it was closer to 7. Whatever the gap was between what they owed the bank and what they had. I set it up so a transfer went out of my account and into theirs the first of every month. Quiet and automatic. The same way I'd changed the oil in my truck without thinking about it. I never brought it up. Bringing it up felt like handing someone a gift and then reading the price tag out loud. My wife raised me better than that. I raised myself better than that. And every year my son would say the same thing. Things are turning around, Dad. Next year we won't need it. I believed him every single time, not because he ever proved it, but because a parent believes the things he needs to be true. That's our great weakness. We call it faith. Sometimes it's just fear wearing faith's coat. So there I was, 6 years into, just till you catch your feet, looking at a photo of a 94-person catered party in the backyard. I helped pay the mortgage on, and I was not on the list. I called my son that night. He answered on the 4th ring, and I heard him step outside, heard the screen door, heard the crickets. That told me he already knew what this was. Hey, Dad. Careful. Rehearsed. I saw the tent, I said. There was a pause you could have parked the truck in. Okay, he finally said. Not sorry. Not caught. Just okay. The way you'd acknowledge a bill. When were you going to tell me my granddaughter's graduating? When were you going to invite her grandfather? It's not a big thing, Dad. It's just a small get-together. Now I have been lied to by professionals. I've had contractors look me in the eye and tell me the leak was under warranty. But there is a special sting in hearing your own son call 94 people a small get-together while you're staring at the RSVP count on your phone. 984 is a small get-together? I said. Your wife's whole book club's a small get-together? The Hendersons from your old street, they're a small get-together? Silence. I saw the list, son. I can read. He sighed, and when he spoke again, there was an edge to it, and under the edge there was somebody else's words. Look, we just wanted to keep it to people who are really part of things. People who show up for the day-to-day. That's all. People who are really part of things. People who show up for the day-to-day. I sat down slow. My knees don't like sudden bad news. I thought about 6 years of first-of-the-month transfers. I thought about the crawl spaces. I thought about braiding hair like rebar. I thought about a boy who wanted chocolate chips, and a mother who never got to make them again, and about the man who'd stood in that gap for 30 years so his son would never have to feel the size of it. People who show up for the day-to-day. I see, I said. Because what else is there? Don't do that, he said. Don't make it into this whole thing. It's one party. To him it was one party. To me it was the last brick coming loose from a wall I'd spent my life laying. And that difference, that gap between what a thing costs, the one who says it and the one who hears it, that's the whole story right there. We hung up. I don't remember saying goodbye. I remember the black bottom of that pot roast and the crickets still going through the phone in my memory even after the call ended. I sat in that kitchen for a long while. People will tell you the hard part of getting old is your knees, your back, the little orange bottles lined up by the coffee maker like soldiers. Nobody warns you about the other thing. Nobody tells you that one day the people you organized your entire existence around might quietly decide you've served your purpose. That you go from load-bearing to decorative, from family to overhead. Around 9 o'clock, my phone rang, and for one stupid second my heart jumped. thinking it was my son calling back to take it all apart. It was Marv. Marv's a retired long-haul trucker who lives 2 doors down, a widower like me, 71. The kind of man who'll tell you your fly's down at a funeral because he figures you'd rather know. We drink bad coffee on his porch most mornings. "You sound like hell," he said, before I'd said 3 words. I told him. All of it. The tent, the 94, the small get-together, the 6 years of the mortgage. When I was done, there was a long quiet, and I could hear him thinking, which is a thing you learn to hear over enough years. "Dale," he said, "you ever haul a load you weren't getting paid for?" "What?" "When I was driving. You never, not once, carried freight for free and let a man treat it like it was his God-given right that you did. You'd have laughed him out of the lot. But you've been running the same load up the same hill for 6 years for that boy, and somewhere along the line he quit seeing it as a favor and started seeing it as the schedule." I didn't have anything to say to that. "You're not his account," Marv said. "Stop letting him bill you like one." I lay awake that night longer than I had in years. Not crying. I was past crying. Just turning it over. The way you turn over a part that won't seat right, looking for the burr you missed. And somewhere around 2 in the morning, I realized I'd spent 6 years trying to earn something that should never have needed earning. Trying harder. Giving more. Fixing the gap every month, hoping that this would finally be the month the gratitude showed up. It never showed up. It was never going to. You can't buy something that's supposed to be free. And God help me, I'd been trying. The next morning I did something I had not done in the 11 years since my wife passed. I planned a trip. For myself. Just me. There was a place I'd wanted to go my whole life and never let myself. My father used to talk about the trout rivers out in Montana like they were scripture, the Bighorn, the Madison, water so clear you could read a newspaper through it. He never made it out there. Worked himself into the ground and died at 63 with the fishing rod he'd bought for the trip still in the box. I have that rod. It's been in my closet for 40 years like a promise nobody kept. I found a little fishing lodge outside of town in Montana, small enough that the gas station was also the post office. I booked 8 days. I bought a plane ticket to Bozeman and a rental car and a fishing license online. And I took my father's rod out of the box for the first time. And the party happened. That Saturday, while 94 people ate catered chicken, a white tent on a lawn I'd kept out of foreclosure. I was standing thigh-deep in a river a couple thousand miles away. My father's rod finally wet, watching a hatch of little pale bugs come off the water in the evening light. I won't lie and say it didn't hurt. It hurt. But there is a specific kind of quiet in the middle of a river that a man can't find anywhere else. And for the first time and longer than I could remember, nobody on this earth needed a single thing from me. Nobody wanted a transfer. Nobody wanted a rescue. Just the water and the cold coming up through my waders and a rod my father never got to use, in hands that finally understood him. The lodge was mostly old-timers like me, retired mechanics and mailmen, and a couple of widowers and one woman in her 80s who outfished all of us and didn't rub it in, which took real character. There was an old rancher who ran the shuttle boat, had to be pushing 80, hands like tree bark. One morning, it was just the 2 of us on the water waiting for the sun to clear the ridge, and he asked me, plain as weather, why a man my age was fishing alone. I told him a little. Not the whole thing. Just that my family had thrown a big party and I hadn't made the guest list. He was quiet a while, watching the water. Then he said, "Cat'll tell you the truth about themselves if you watch long enough. So will people. Trouble is, most folks see what a person does and then argue themselves out of believing it." He spat over the side of the boat. "You already know what you know. You're just out here deciding whether you've got the nerve to act like it." I thought about that old man for the rest of the trip. I still think about him. He was right. I already knew. I'd known for years, probably. I just hadn't had the nerve. The last afternoon, I sat on the lodge porch and did a thing I'd started doing since I retired, which is to write in a spiral notebook when my head gets too full. And I wrote down a question I'd been circling my whole life without ever landing on. What would happen, I wrote, if I stopped being the one who caught everybody? What if, just once, at 66 years old, I let myself be caught instead? Or, God forbid, let nobody need catching at all? I didn't have the answer yet, but it was coming. It was already in the mail, so to speak, and I just didn't know it. I flew home on a Sunday. The second the plane touched down in Grand Rapids and I turned my phone off airplane mode, it went off in my hand like a fire alarm. Buzz after buzz after buzz. Missed calls stacking up. Voicemails. Texts filling the screen faster than I could read them. For one cold second, I thought somebody had died. My stomach dropped the way it does. Then I looked at the names. Every single one of them was my son or my daughter-in-law. 17 missed calls, 5 voicemails, more texts than I'd gotten in the entire previous year. I opened the first one, dated 3 days back, right around when the automatic transfer should have gone out and hadn't, because the week before I'd left, I'd quietly turned it off. Dad, the mortgage didn't go through. Call me. 15 minutes later. Dad, it says insufficient. Did you change something? Then, from my daughter-in-law, and this is the part that stopped me cold. Dale, we need this handled today. The bank charges a fee after the 5th. Dale. Not Dad, which she'd called me for 18 years. Dale. Like I was a vendor who'd missed a delivery. Then more. Dad, we got a late notice. This is serious. Why aren't you answering? And one from my son, near the end, that just said, Where are you? I sat in that airport terminal a long time reading through all of it, and here is what I noticed, and it went into me like a splinter you can't get out. Not one of those messages asked where I'd been. Not one asked if I was all right, if I was safe, why a man who'd never in his life gone a week without answering his phone had gone dark. Not one mentioned the graduation, or my granddaughter, or the party I'd been left out of. 17 calls, and every last one of them was about money that hadn't arrived on time. I'd flown 2,000 miles to a river to fish with my dead father's rod, and my family hadn't noticed I was gone. They'd only noticed the transfer was. I drove home. I didn't call anybody back. I wanted a clear head. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and 6 years of bank statements, which I'd printed out at the library that afternoon, and I did the arithmetic I'd spent 6 years refusing to do. I added it up. First of the month, every month, for 6 years. It came to more than I'd paid for my first house. More than my truck and my father's truck put together. Enough, if I'd kept it, to have never worried about the cost of a single thing for the rest of my life. And I want to be clear, I don't regret $1 of it as help. What I regret is that I never once made them look at the number. Because a number tells a story people would rather not hear. And the story this one told was that just till you catch your feet had, without anybody ever deciding it out loud, become a line item in their budget. A utility. Something that arrived like the water and the power and got about as much thought. They weren't grateful when the money came. Why would they be? You're not grateful to the faucet. The next morning my son called and I answered. Dad, thank God. Relief, pure and simple. No hello, no how was your week, no I'm sorry. The mortgage bounced. Did something happen with your account? I'm fine, son. Thanks for asking. I let that sit a second. He didn't catch it. Okay, good, but listen, we've got a late notice, and the bank. When? I said, did my mortgage become my mortgage? Quiet. Then, careful. What do you mean? I mean, I've been paying it for 6 years. I'm asking you when everybody, including me, started calling it yours. Dad, come on, this isn't the time. It's exactly the time. It might be the only time it's ever been the time. I could hear my daughter-in-law in the background, low and sharp, and I could hear him half covering the phone. When he came back, his voice had that borrowed edge again, the one that wasn't really his. Can we deal with the payment first and do the feelings later? And there it was, the whole thing in one sentence. The money couldn't wait. The father could. I want to tell you I gave a long speech. I didn't. I've spent my life around men who talk too much, and I've learned that the important things fit in a small space. I opened my messages. I typed slow, and I read it twice before I sent it, because I knew once I sent it, some things weren't coming back. I wrote, a hand up isn't the same as a standing order. I'm not the safety net anymore. You two are grown. Figure out what your life actually costs, and then live in it. Then I turned the phone over on the table, face down, and I did not pick it up. It buzzed in under a minute. Then again, Dad, are you serious? You're doing this because of the party. This is insane, we have a kid. That last one nearly got me. It's built into a parent. That reflex, the word kid, yanks a cord that's wired straight to your spine. My hand actually moved toward the phone. And then I thought about 94 catered dinners, and I left it where it was. For the first time in my adult life, I did not fix it. I didn't transfer the money. I didn't call the bank. I didn't rescue anybody. And I sat in the quiet of my kitchen with my cold coffee, and I waited to feel like the villain because I'd been braced for it. But it never came. What came instead was something I hadn't felt in years. Something so light I almost didn't recognize it. It felt like setting down a load I'd been carrying so long I'd stopped noticing the weight until it was gone. The first few days after were quiet in a way I didn't expect. The texts slowed, then stopped. The calls dried up, and I understood, sitting in that silence, that as long as the money kept flowing, I'd been useful. And as long as I was useful, they'd stay on the line. Cut the money and the calls go with it. That told me more than any late notice ever could. About a week later, my son's truck pulled into my driveway a little after lunch. I watched him get out through the front window. He looked older than he had at Christmas, not in his face exactly, in how he was standing. Reality has a way of aging a man fast once it starts collecting. I opened the door before he knocked. Dad, come in. He sat at the same kitchen table where I'd taught him long division, where I'd cried after his mother's funeral with him already asleep down the hall, and for a second I saw him at 10, and then at 7, and then at 39, all of them at once, the way you do with your own child. He didn't start with sorry. He started with, you put us in a really bad spot. I didn't take the bait. Sit, I said. Let me ask you something. Do you know how much I've sent you these past 6 years? He shifted. I don't. Some. A lot. I know it's a lot. Guess. He named a number. He was off by more than half. Low. Way low. And that, right there, told me everything. He hadn't been keeping track, because you don't keep track of the weather. You just expect it to keep doing what it does. I slid the printouts across the table. 6 years, first of every month, highlighted in yellow, because I'd sat up doing it the night before, with a marker like some kind of accountant of my own foolishness. He looked at the total at the bottom. I watched it land. I watched the color go out of his face. Dad, he said quietly. I didn't know it was that. I know, I said, and I meant it kindly. That's the whole problem, son. You never had to know. Because I never made you. He was quiet for a long time. Then, and this is the first honest thing he'd said in weeks, he said, the party wasn't my idea. The how big it got, any of it. He rubbed his face. I told her we couldn't afford it. She said we'd figure it out. We always figure it out. A bitter little laugh. Turns out figuring it out meant you. That's when it started coming apart for him, right there at my table, the way a wall comes apart once the first brick's gone. Over the next hour, in pieces it came out, and it was worse than I'd guessed. The party, financed. The furniture in that big foyer, financed. 2 vacations I'd assumed they'd saved for, financed. There was a home equity line of credit against the house I'd been keeping current, and it was nearly maxed. There were credit cards I'd never heard about. My daughter-in-law, it turned out, had been running the family the way she ran that party, on the appearance of having it handled, and the mortgage money I'd been sending hadn't been keeping them afloat at all. It had been the last clean thing propping up a house of cards, and I felt sorry for him. I did, not about the money. About the other thing, the thing you can't refinance, which is the slow, terrible discovery that you've built your life alongside someone whose relationship with the truth is negotiable. That's a hard thing to learn at 40. It's a hard thing to learn at any age. I didn't gloat. There was nothing to gloat about. I just said, you've got some decisions to make, son. And for the first time in 6 years, I'm not one of them. He left without arguing. And that, more than any speech, told me something had finally gotten through. The reckoning in that house took months, and it wasn't pretty. And it wasn't my business. And I made myself keep it that way, which was the hardest self-control I've ever practiced. Small towns talk, and Grand Rapids suburbs aren't as big as they think they are. And things drifted back to me the way things do. The truck went up for sale. There was a hard conversation with the bank. My daughter-in-law, I heard, was furious, and a good chunk of her fury landed on me. The old man who'd finally closed the tap, and I let her have it, because a person who's been caught always needs someone to be angry at besides the mirror. But here is the part I didn't see coming. Here is the part that saved everything. My granddaughter called me. It was a Thursday evening, 3 weeks or so after my son had come to the house, and I almost didn't recognize her voice because it was so small. "Grandpa? Hey, sweetheart." I hadn't heard from her since before the trip, and I'd assumed, God help me, that she'd been told her grandfather was a stingy old man who'd let the family down. "Grandpa, why didn't you come to my party?" I stopped. "What did they tell you?" "Mom said you couldn't make it, that you had a trip planned you couldn't move." Her voice cracked. "But I heard them fighting, and I heard Dad say you weren't even invited, and Grandpa, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I would have. I made them save you, She couldn't finish it, and it all came clear. The last piece of it, the piece I'd been missing. My daughter-in-law hadn't left me off that list by accident. She'd left me off on purpose, because I was the one person at that party who'd have looked at the tent and the caterer and the 94 covers and asked the one question nobody was supposed to ask, which was, how, in God's name, are you paying for this? I was a liability. I might have seen. So she cut me out and told my granddaughter I was too busy for her, and let an 18-year-old girl believe her grandfather hadn't bothered to show up for the biggest day of her life. I have been angry a handful of times in my life that I'd call real anger. That was one of them, but I didn't let my granddaughter hear it. I just said, "Baby, listen to me. There is nowhere on this earth I would rather have been than at your party. Nowhere. You remember that, no matter what anybody ever tells you. Your grandpa would crawl across broken glass to watch you get a diploma." She cried. I cried quietly, so she couldn't hear it. The phone pressed hard against my ear. And then she said something that I've written in my notebook and underlined twice. "You always showed up before," she said. "For everything. My whole life. That's how I knew something was wrong. Because you always show up. You always show up." From the one person in that family who'd been paying attention, it took a teenager to see what two grown adults couldn't, that the man had been standing in the room the whole time. And the standing there was the love, and they'd stopped being able to see it because it had never once made a noise. We started over, she and I. It was easy with her. It was always easy with her. I took her to breakfast at the diner where I used to take her when she was little enough to sit on a phone book, and we talked, and I learned things I hadn't known about how tense that house had been, about the fights, about a mother who blamed the whole world, the bank and the economy and the neighbors and my son and, yes, me, for everything, and never once turned that finger around toward herself. My son and his wife separated that fall. I won't dress it up as a victory because it isn't one. A marriage coming apart is just a long receipt for a lot of small mistakes. And there were children of God on both sides of it, and I take no pleasure in any of it. They sold the house, the one with the foyer. My son moved into an apartment, a small one, and got a second job, and started, at 40, doing the thing I should have made him do at 30, which was to find out with his own two hands what his life actually cost and then live inside that number. He hated it at first. Then he got quiet about it. Then, slowly, he got proud of it. The specific quiet pride of a man paying his own way, which is a pride you cannot give somebody. They have to earn it, and they can only earn it if you get out of the road. That's the part I got wrong for 6 years, and I'll own it. Because a story where the old man is blameless is a story that's lying to you. I thought I was helping. I was enabling. There's a hair's difference between the two words and a canyon's difference between the two acts. Help hands a man a tool. Enabling hands him an excuse. I'd been so scared of my son ever feeling the size of the gap his mother left that I'd spent 30 years filling every gap he ever had. And a man who's never been allowed to fall never learns that he can get back up. I stole that from him, out of love, which is the worst way to steal something because you can't even see you're doing it. It took most of a year, but my son came back around. Not all at once. Real change never is. There was a night he called me, late, and I could tell he'd been sitting with something. And he finally said, "Dad, when Mom died, you never let me see how bad it was. The money. How scared you were. Any of it." And I said, "No, I didn't, because I didn't want him carrying it." And he said, "But because you hid it so good, I grew up thinking it was all easy. I thought money just showed up. I thought you just showed up. I never once thought about what it cost you." And there was a long silence on the line. And then he said the thing I'd waited a year, and if I'm honest, 6 years, and if I'm more honest, most of my life, to hear. He said, "I stopped seeing you, Dad. Somewhere in there, I stopped seeing you and started seeing a bank. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I didn't say it was okay because it wasn't, and he didn't need me to lie to him one more time. I just said, "I'm glad you can see me now, son. That's all I ever wanted. Not the thanks. Just to be seen." The following June, a year after the party I wasn't invited to, my granddaughter finished her first year of college, and she threw a little cookout in the backyard of my son's small apartment. Nothing catered, nothing under a tent, just a grill, and folding chairs, and a cooler of pop, and the good kind of paper plates that don't fold in half when you put potato salad on them. When I got there, my granddaughter came running across the grass and grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the table. "Grandpa," she said, "come on, I saved you the good chair." It was just a lawn chair, one of those aluminum ones with the woven plastic straps. Most people wouldn't look at it twice. But I stood there in that little backyard holding a plate, and I couldn't quite talk for a second, because a year before I hadn't rated a folding chair among 94. And now an 18-year-old girl had saved me the good one, and made sure I knew she'd been thinking about where her grandfather would sit. Later, my son stood up by the grill with a can of pop and cleared his throat, which he does exactly the way I do, which I'd never noticed until that moment, and said he wanted to say something. He looked at me, and he didn't say anything fancy. That's not us. We're not fancy people. He just said, "I spent a long time thinking my dad's love was the money. It wasn't. The money was just the only way I let myself notice it." He had to stop for a second. He was in every room I was ever in. I just couldn't see him because he never made a sound doing it. I can see him now. Better late than never, I guess. And he raised the pop can toward me, my son, in a folding chair in a small backyard, paying his own way. And that was worth more than every dollar I ever sent. I've had a year to think about all of it. And I want to leave you with the one thing I've landed on. Because if you're listening to an old man tell this story, chances are you've got somebody in your own life you're either carrying or being carried by, and it'd be a shame if I didn't hand you the tool I paid so much for. Here it is. Do not let anybody teach you that your worth is the same as your usefulness. They are not the same thing, and the day you confuse them is the day you hand someone a rope to lead you around by. You are not worth what you provide. You're worth what you are. And if the people around you can only see you when you're providing, the problem was never your absence. It was always their eyes. I don't hate my former daughter-in-law. Her road went where it went, and mine went where it went. And I've lived long enough to watch the ledger settle itself without my help, quiet and patient and sure, which is how it usually settles, no matter how badly we want to grab the pen. When I look at my son now, I don't see the man who called 94 people a small get-together. I see a man who fell hard, got up on his own for the first time in his life, and learned to stand there. And when I look at my granddaughter, I see the only one who was watching the whole time, the one who knew something was wrong for exactly one reason, because the old man always showed up. And one day he didn't, and she felt the shape of it. If there's somebody in your life who spent years quietly showing up for you, a mother, a father, a grandparent, some old soul who never made a sound about it, go tell them you saw them. Don't wait until the only way left to say it is at a graveside. And if you're the one who's been carrying everybody, if you're tired down in your bones from being the net, I want you to hear an old pipefitter tell you, it is not selfish to set the load down. Sometimes the most loving thing your hands can do is stop catching people long enough for them to learn they've got feet. I fished that river again this year, took my father's rod, caught a good one right at dusk, held it up to the last of the light, and let it go. Thank you for sitting with me a while. Go call the person you thought of just now. Do it while you still can.